weeks since we've been there. Hebrews chapter 4, verses 3 through 10. I cautiously say we want to look at the topic of rest. I say that cautiously because I want you to fall asleep. But I think there's a lot of misunderstanding, and I know, especially if you look at Hebrews, there's a lot of depth, there's a lot of Old Testament knowledge combined with the reality of the cross, and then how it applies to us, and connecting all those dots can certainly be a challenge. And it's certainly not saying that I've got all things figured out by any means. But I can say that I think in the area of the topic of rest that we are called to do, I think there's definitely some misconceptions. Let's say it that way. One misconception I think there is equating Sunday with the Sabbath, and that don't do anything on Sunday. And so I think we ought to be setting aside time to focus on our God, the first fruits of the week, as the essence of the entirety of our lives. And I think that there's a lot that is missed because we're so busy and we're not setting aside that time. But I think there's a lot of misunderstandings. Like I said, I remember when we first moved here, this was before the garage, so that would have meant before the fire. And so that would have meant it was within our first 6 months of being here in Toulon. The garage was not here, but the house was there. And I think he must have had a Sunday afternoon service or something along those lines, but it was mid to late afternoon. It was kind of in the fall time frame. And our boys were about the only ones that we had at that time. Were outside playing, and they were young. They were like smaller than Josiah at that time, and they had raked up some pile of leaves. I think about where the garage is right now. The trees for the neighbors had all was congregated right there where the garage is, and they had gone outside. They had piled in there, jumping in them, and my wife and I have been inside and kind of watched from the windows. We decided, we're going to go out and just have some fun with kids. And so we got some rakes and we made this huge pile, and we were burying it, and just giggles and all of this. And at one point, I was standing there with the rake in my hand, kind of like that. What's that thing?
American Gothic.
Yes, American Gothic. I was standing there, and the two boys, little rascals that they were at that time, like 17 years ago now, were jumping in the leaves, and one of them I think was hiding the leaves, the other one being like a dog trying to find. I don't remember what was going on. But someone pulled up and said, "Hey, preacher, come here." It was somebody I knew of, but certainly not connected to the church anyway. And I went over to the car, kind of carried my rake with me. He's like, "What you got in your hand?" Right? No, that's a funny question. I didn't think we should hold some old rakes on Sundays. What? I didn't say it that way, but I was like, "Oh yeah, the Sabbath. Yeah, well, we're just playing with our boys." "Oh, I don't think you should be doing that." And he was like, as honest as serious can be. Well, it's a shame. We're missing something here. No, I'm literally not doing this for. Yes, raking the yard is work. I admit that. And if you want to give me any excuse to not do that, I'm willing to take that excuse. But we're having fun with the kids. We're just enjoying the afternoon. It's just one of those beautiful fall days. And they had already been outside. And I remember thinking for like the first half hour after they left, feeling really guilty. Like, maybe said the gentleman, maybe we should just go inside. It's like, we're just playing with the kids. This is just, I think sometimes we get into this concept of the rest and the Sabbath rest and what is the Sabbath and what can you do on Sundays, and even the confusion of are we Jews or Gentiles and all of that, and is it Saturday or Sunday? And it's amazing when you think of the Sabbath rest of, well, obviously in the Old Testament, which we'll get to here in a moment, based off of the calendar of creation, the Sabbath fell on the seventh day. Not even on that seventh day, remember what the Lord said, on six days shalt thou do what? Work. And on the seventh day thou shalt rest. Which means 6 days there's work, and the seventh day is what? Rest. You don't do any work. Which means when does their work begin? Sunday. After the time of the resurrection, and they began to worship God on Sundays in connection with the empty tomb and kind of a new aspect of that first church. What would a Sunday been for them? It would have been their Monday. It would have been their first day as a Jew. They were now focusing on gathering together and worship of God on Sunday, as we still do today. But the Sunday for them would not be as we enjoy today. The Sunday for them in their culture would have been the first day of the week of work. 6 days of the work, and so it would have, Sundays would have been their first work day, and Saturday still would have been the traditional, in their time frame, in their age, when nobody did anything. It was the day from sunset to sunset, that there was no requirements of any work. You could only, I forget what it was, we went through this, how many feet you could walk, and how many pounds you could carry, and you remember you can't even spit on the dirt, because dirt and spit make mud, and then you just now created mud, and so that's work. And all the rules that went alongside with the Sabbath. You know, there is a lot of confusion. The other concept that I think gets a little distorted, a little misunderstood in regards to the Sabbath is this thinking today, which seems to be becoming more prevalent. And it's alarmingly so, I'd say it this way. The concept of me time. Rest means me time. And even to the point of it's not just a once a week rest, it's you need to have some me time every day. And that whole concept of for this hour, for these 2 hours, whatever time frame it is, it's just what I want. And you know, you got the me time, and when I say me time, I'm not talking about God and me time. I'm talking about if I'm a female, I'm gonna have some time to get my fingers done. My fingernails done. Or I'm going to get that back massage. Or I'm just going to sit on the back porch and do nothing. And it's just me. Nobody else, nothing else. And it's not me and my God. It's just me time. Well, again, we're missing the point of what the Sabbath rest is. We're missing the point of our relationship with our God. And certainly on one side of the coin, there are those who contradict that and say, well, Christians shouldn't even have vacations. You shouldn't be getting away. It's not in the Bible. And you need to be working. Again, 6 days shall not work. And there's nothing in the Bible that talks about vacations. And I even heard one, it was online, I think, but one pastor said that any Christian that goes on vacation is in sin. What? Wait, what? How are you connecting all those dots? But on the other side of the coin, then, we have the very reality that Christ called his disciples to come away for a while and rest. Now, when you notice, when he called them away for a while to rest, he wasn't calling them to the beach to enjoy the summer. He wasn't taking them to their favorite vacation spot or removing them from responsibilities and their commitments. When he took them away for a while, it literally was for a while, short time, for a few hours, and it was in essence to allow them to be away from all of the poles and the distractions to get refocused on who Christ was and their mission, their work. And I think that, again, much can be said, an entire series can be said on this topic of rest. We want to go over these next several verses and hopefully quick enough so that you don't find a different kind of rest. In verse 3, well, here's some review. Let's go through here. Don't sleep through the rest. That's what I'm going to call it. A little, kind of like last week, we had a little baby in the corner. Here we have a different baby. Sound asleep. Last night with some of Becca's kittens that were fostering. How old are they? Like 6, 8 weeks, something like that. So they're just rascal kittens. When we were getting ready to go to bed, we looked over, and one of them had found itself on the recliner. And in like the perfect kitten pose, all paws and just sound asleep. Just, I don't know if one of them got a picture, but it was the perfect picture moment. The peacefulness of rest. But let us not sleep through this rest. Look at verse 3. The timing involved of the rest. It says, for we which have believed do enter into rest, as he said, almost as a quote, I have sworn in my wrath, they shall enter into my rest, although the works were finished from the foundation of the world. For he spake in a certain place of the seventh day on this wise, and God did rest the seventh day from all his works. Now, if you try to put the pieces together here in regards to what's the timing involved in these two verses. The beginning of verse 3 seems to be referring back to the last chapter. In fact, if you go to Hebrews chapter 3, verse 11, says this, so I swear in my wrath, they shall not enter into my rest. What is he talking about at that time frame? They're going into the promised land, going into Canaan, and missing it out because of their unbelief, because they would not trust him. And they missed out on that rest. The timing for that, verse 11, was exactly at that time frame. We go back to verse 3, it says, "For in which we believe did enter into rest, and he said, I sworn to my wrath, they shall enter into my rest." As verse 11 says, "Although the works were finished from the foundation of the world." Now we have the timing at the end of verse 3 that goes well before the time frame of Canaan. And we're at the very foundation of the earth. We're at the very creation of the world. And verse 4 continues on that argument. "For he spake in a certain place on the seventh day on this wise, and God did rest the seventh day from all his works." Now, it can't be stated that ever since creation, God has continued to be in a state of rest. We know, and we can be confident in it, that our God is constantly at work. He's constantly doing a work in us. And I'm thankful for that. We have that confidence that he's continually doing a work in us. But we also have, as recorded for us in Genesis, that on the seventh day he did rest. Now, imagine with me, if you could, just going back to that time frame, the timing of the past rest. Imagine being Adam and Eve. This is our Creator's seventh day, but in essence, it's their second day. And they get to enjoy the rest with the Creator on the seventh day. Can you imagine what that would have been like? Huh. Now, for them, they've done it. They don't know what work is yet. They don't know what is yet ahead for them. And for them, they're still trying to figure out, perhaps even, I don't know the timing and how quickly Adam was able to name all these animals. Certainly that would have taken some time. Obviously, we have, I think, more species now from the generations, and as even mankind has begun to mix breeds and come up with differences now. But nonetheless, I imagine that that seventh day, their second day, would have been quite an amazing time of function. What would have happened the next day? Now, obviously, we don't know completely. We know that they were told to subdue the earth. We know that they were told to take charge of all that creation that God had given to them. Certainly, there would have been work, but we know that it wasn't until after the fall that they truly understood what true work was all about. And but a simple question: when we think about the rest that they enjoyed with the Creator on the seventh day, their second day, comparing it to the very next day, what would have changed? And certainly, as we know, up until the time of the fall, God walked in the garden with them, it seems, daily. And just what they had in Christ in that moment. Certainly, there was work to be done. Certainly, they had responsibilities. Certainly, there was a task to be done. But it wasn't until the fall that work really became that not so fun word because of the judgment upon them for their sin and us for our sin. Then we have that same word as far as rest being used there in beginning of verse 3 in regards to many generations later entering into the promised land, or missing entering into the promised land, and missing entering into that rest. And as we'll see here in a moment, it refers then even later to our time frame today and thereafter. Just imagine, though, in their time frame, they would not have had days wondering if God loved them. Second day, day of rest with the Creator. Third day, guess you would call their first Sunday. They didn't wake up that morning wondering if God still loved them. They didn't wonder where God was. They would have, at this point, would have had that feeling of guilt. They would not have yet known the feeling of failed frustrations. The frustrations of failure, you can even say it that way. They certainly would not have, and the list could go on, of all the things that many times we wake up with those uncertainties, of those, I didn't get this done yet, or why did I do it this way, or all the things and questions and all of that. Again, they lived in a scenario where they walked with God daily, in His presence, with His voice, again until the time of the fall. And certainly things change then. The timing of the past rest. We have two timings involved, but it equates to the time of the rest from the creation, which correlates to the time of the rest of what they missed out on in Canaan because of their unbelief. But notice the location of the current rest. We'll call it that way, verse 5. The location of the curtain rest, verse 5. And in this place, and my Bible has place italicized, but what the word this kind of lends it to adding the word place there. And in this again is ultimately what it's saying. And in this place again, if they shall enter into my rest. So now we're looking, I know if sometimes kind of has that idea of future, but it's the terminology has it from this point forward. If they shall enter into my resting, therefore it remaineth that some must enter therein, and they to whom it was first preached enter not in because again of unbelief. Again, he limited a certain day, saying to David, today, after so long a time as it is said, today, if you will hear his voice, harden not your hearts. For if Jesus had given them rest, they would not have afterward have spoken of another day. Again, here sometimes it's very difficult. It's almost like Paul's most difficult passages are compiled into the entirety of whoever the writer of Hebrews was, compiling all of that. But notice quickly, what would be the location of the current rest? There are places that I have been that do not provide much rest. Driving through Chicago would be one of them. Not a lot of rest there. I would have to say, at least at the time that we were there, driving to Atlanta, I think it might have even been worse than Chicago. A gazillion lanes and traffic everywhere. Wasn't exactly a time of rest. Now, we took Matt up to a camp last May and sat there at the Wilds. That was amazingly, we'll use the word peaceful with a purpose of having a different word there. It was amazingly peaceful. We went on a vacation many years ago now as a family to Gatlinburg and had rented a cabin for the week. And I remember waking up that very next day and sitting on the back porch. And I shared this before, but sitting on the back porch, rocking the rocking chair. Kids were just waking up, and I think Jen had been working on some breakfast for us all, and as she was working on the breakfast, I sat on the back porch and was just doing some reading, and as the kids were getting ready, she came out onto the back porch, and we had our two rocking chairs right next to each other. And as we looked out, you could see kind of right on the side of a mountain, and there's a tree below, and the mist coming up from that. It was early May. It was actually my birthday time frame, and I remember saying to her, I don't think we'd ever have to leave here. You know what? I know I've shared this before, but just kind of step back to get the full picture of that very moment to help you understand how quickly we can define rest incorrectly. We had reserved that cabin from Sunday night till I think Friday night, if I recall. And we had planned on leaving Thursday. We have the Wednesday night service. We're going to leave at Thursday, and we have some plans we're going to do along the way. I think Louisville Slugger Museum and other things that we're going to hit on along the way. And I had some hotels figured out on the long time. And then about 3 o'clock, when we could check in on Sunday afternoon, we were going to head over to our cabin and enjoy the cabin. Well, the day before we were to leave, a member of our church lost a baby. And in fact, the very next day was the first day we met Justin Cruz. And funeral services wanted to be on Sunday. And we had called the cabin, because it's one of those, you can't get your money back, you can't change your reservation. And we called them and I said, hey, I'm a pastor. We got a funeral on Sunday afternoon. We are not obviously going to be there Sunday afternoon. We're still about 14 hours away, so this is not going to happen. We still want the room. And we're not looking for credit. We just don't want you to get rid of our room, our cabin. We will be there, but it won't be till Monday. And they literally said to us, if you're not there by the time of our office closes on Sunday night, we reserve the right to give it to anybody else. And I explained to them, I am a pastor. I cannot leave. This is not planned. We intend on being there. I just have a funeral on Sunday afternoon at 3 o'clock. And as soon as that's over, we're on our way, but we won't be there. So her literal words were, well, what time do you be here? I'll service at 3, we'll probably be done by 4, I'll be on the road by 5, so we'll probably be there like at 7 o'clock Monday morning. All right, we open up at 8, as long as you're there before 8 in the morning, the cabin's yours. So I remember it was just one of those Sundays where we're not even supposed to be in town. We're already supposed to be out there, but I'm here. But there's a reason for that, and I'm not complaining about that. But we had a morning service, we had a meal, And I think we skipped the afternoon service because we encourage everybody to be a part of the funeral service. And there is nothing more physically, emotionally, mentally draining than doing a funeral for an infant. It was one of the hardest funerals I've had to do. And the families have lots of questions, a lot of emotions. There's just a lot going on in that moment. And I remember getting to the end of the service and going back to the parsonage and saying, I'm whipped. I am exhausted. And it's not hardly even the middle of the day yet. I'm just beat. But we got to go. We got to get here because we got to be in Gatlinburg before 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. And so we hit the road literally running. We had fast food, drive-through on the way there. And we got there Monday morning right before they opened so we could get checked in and do all of that. And that wanted to be my birthday. It was my birthday. We arrived there, and we got unpacked, got all that settled in. And I remember we went on a little eat later that evening to go out for my dinner birthday, my 35th birthday. And I remember sitting in a restaurant. I don't remember what it was. It might have been Applebee's. I don't remember what it was. Some restaurant that served steak in the area. And I remember saying to Jen, I am just so tired. I can't even order. I'm just beat. And we made it through the dinner. I made it through the dinner. I was able to order. I was able to eat, and I was definitely able to enjoy. But then we got back to the cabin. We went to bed. I think we got to bed. I said to my wife, "Can you keep in mind these kids were young, and so they slept the whole way there. We got there 7 in the morning. They're ready to play. They're ready to run. They're ready to explore. Dad's ready to die. He's been driving all night." After having a very hard, long day, and but there's no sleep for Dad. So we're hitting the ground running, we're exploring, we're checking out the woods, we're checking out town. They're in Gatlinburg, we go out for dinner. I get back and I said to my wife, I cannot keep my eyes open. I've got to get to bed. Went to bed probably like 7:30, 8 o'clock. Probably the last time I've done that in my life since then. And that next morning, sitting in a rocking chair, saying to myself, I don't ever want to leave here. And in my mind, that's rest, but not this rest. That's not what this is talking about. The place, the location of this current rest. If we can grasp what is being said here, again, we're talking about creation, place. We're talking about missing it because of unbelief and going into Canaan. But then we're talking, as it refers to, verse 7, again, he limited a certain day, saying in David, Psalms 95, verses 7 and 8. Let me read these verses. For he is our God, and we are the people of his pasture, and the sheep of his hand. Today, if you will hear his voice. David is quoting what Moses said back when they missed the Sabbath, or missed the rest that was entitled to them. I'll say it that way. That was given to them, that God wanted to give them. Not entitled is probably the wrong word, but wanted to give to them, but they didn't enjoy it because of their unbelief. David is quoting many years later, there in the promised land, in Canaan, in Jerusalem. The city has been established. Not only that, but the nation of Israel is now a mighty nation. And David says the exact same words that Moses said to them, saying, guys, how could you have missed this? David says those same words to them now in that place. Today, if you will hear his voice, harden not your hearts, as they did. As in the day of temptation in the wilderness, when your fathers tempted me, proved me, and saw my works. 40 years long was I grieved with this generation, and said, it is the people that do err in their hearts, and they have not known my ways, unto whom I swear in my wrath, and they should not enter into my rest. So many generations later, the location now, we've gone from the garden, we've gone to the shores, just outside of the promised land, we've gone into the center of Jerusalem, the nation established. And David is still saying the same things. Today, if you will, the opportunity is still there for you to enter into this rest. In other words, it's not about a location. I think a lot of times we think that if we could just be here, if we could just get there, and I've thought many times, if we just go back to Tennessee, if I could find that cabin again and find that back porch, oh, that was so wonderful. That wasn't what was being talked about here. A lot of times we have this idea, if I could just get away, if I could change my job, if I could change my address, if I could change my state, if I could just get out of here, I can finally enjoy this rest. No, you won't. Because this rest is not talking about a specific place. This rest is talking about a specific relationship with our God. And what I challenge that is Colossians chapter 2, verses 16 and 17. Let no man therefore judge you in meat or in drink, in respect of a holy day, or of the new moon, or even of the Sabbath day, which are a shadow of things to come. But the body is of Christ. In other words, all these things that are leading up to this rest in the Garden of Eden, that's what they missed because of unbelief. The rest of David said, hey, you guys, you're doing it again. You're missing it. Don't miss out on this rest. All of it leads us even into the New Testament, again, where it says, hey, this is what it's about. All those things are just a shadow of what is to come. And that shadow being the person of Christ. It's the person of Christ that is leaving a shadow that goes all the way back to the day of creation. May we look to the person of Christ. May it be Him. This rest, the location, the place is not about a rocking chair on the back porch. This rest, the person, the place is not about Canaan, and if only we could have been there. This rest, the location of that rest is not about if only we could go back to the Garden of Eden and be like Adam and Eve. This rest, actually it is about that. To go back to the Garden of Eden and be like Adam and Eve, to have the rest and the relationship, the walk with Christ that they had, we still have available to us. Think of it this way. They had that perfect rest in Christ, correct? Can you imagine waking up in the morning and hearing your name being called by God? I remember as a child having my name being called the first thing in the morning, but it was by my mom. Art, Bob, time to get off to school. It really wasn't pleasant. I love my mom. But getting woken up and having your name hollered out to say, it's time for school, it's not so pleasant. Do you imagine hearing, Art, this is God. I'm here to fellowship with you. Can you even imagine that? And then because of sin, what happened with that? It suffered. They lost. And they didn't have that same relationship. But even already before that time, God already had established how they could get that restored, correct? In the person of Christ. And from that point on, from sin on, we begin to have the establishment of the law that begins to put the shadow of Christ that is to come in regards to the 6 days shalt thou work, but on the 7th day thou shalt not work, thou shalt rest. And then we move to the nation of Israel missing out on a rest and getting into Canaan because they did not believe. They would not trust God. And they missed out on it. Then we have David, their generation later, saying, hey, here we are now. That rest is still available to you. You still need to claim it. And then we go many, many more generations, and here we are in the time of the writing of Hebrews. And in essence, the writer of Hebrews is saying, all right, here we are still. The rest is still available to you. Don't be like they were in the past that missed it. Don't be like what happened already. It is still available to you where you are right now, today. It's not about a location. It's not about that perfect vacation. It's not about that perfect cabin. It's not about that perfect state that there could be such a thing. It's about the very representation of Christ. We're seeing the shadow of Him in all of this, all the way back. The timing of the past rest, the location of the current rest, but then I like this, the extent, so I'll call it, of the future rest. Look at verse 9. So there remaineth. Did I read verse 8? Let me read verse 8. For Jesus had given them rest, and would He not afterwards have spoken of another day? That's finishing up my last point. What is being said here is, hey, if that rest was only about being in Canaan, then why in the world did David speak about that same rest that you can still enter into it? Continuing on verse 9. There remaineth therefore a rest, there remaineth. In other words, it's still in the future. It's still there ahead. A rest of the people of God. For he that has entered into his rest, he also has ceased from his own works, as God did from his. It would seem to me that ultimately we have an ability to enjoy that true rest in Christ. It's not about having a rake in your hands on a Sunday afternoon. And it's not about being in Canaan as opposed to being in the wilderness. It's not about being anywhere else in creation as opposed to being in the Garden of Eden. It's not about a location, it's not about a timing, but it's about a person of Christ. And what a blessing that we know and we have the confidence of is that we can enjoy today. But imagine one day when we stand before a holy God and truly grasp all that He is, to have that ultimate rest, confidence in Him. Yesterday, as we sat at Mrs. Ear's bedside, she was sound asleep. She had finished her lunch and she was out. In fact, Mary said she thought I'd be out till about 7 o'clock last night. And so Mary was just sharing stories and all of that. Interestingly enough, very interesting side note, kind of similar to my dad to a point and his testimony. But Mrs. Zier grew up in a home in Freeport area, Illinois. We had a neighbor who had a heart for the kids in the home and said, I want to take you guys to Sunday school. And that's how she got saved. And now, a couple generations later, are still carrying on that, we'll say, the Christian legacy of a neighbor who brought Mrs. Zier to Sunday school. And just amazing how, again, like we were talking about this morning, Holy Spirit's work in and through the body of Christ, and what a responsibility that we have to live that out and be that. But anyway, as we were discussing and sharing stories, and that's when Mary mentioned that her mom had told the workers there that, boy, she longed to be with her Lord, but she wanted to be able to be here with her kids. And we kind of continued on in that conversation a little bit, and as she's taking her very labored breaths, and with tears in her eyes, Mary made some comment about, one day the suffering's gonna be over, and I just kind of put my hand on Mrs. Deer's hand. She's sound asleep, so I don't even know if she even knew I was there. I put my hand on her hand, and I said, "Yeah, this dear lady's got it made." She takes her last breath. She's standing in the presence of God. And it's for the rest of us here on this earth. That's what's hard for the rest of us. But this lady's got it made. Because she has that confidence that in her last moment here on earth, her very next moment is under the complete understanding of the fullness of God. And I said before, I don't know if we'll immediately fully understand all that God is, or if we'll be learning throughout eternity. I can't fathom all of that God is. But I can't imagine that moment when your last moment here turns into the first moment there. And that rest that shall be, the best rest that we have here in the confidence of Christ, is still mixed with the very turmoil of the flesh and the turmoil of society. And one day that rest that shall be is going to so far outmeasure whatever we could ever have here on this earth. And what a joy. Again, it all goes back to the person of Christ and the rest that we can have on Him. Now, should you rake leaves on a Sunday afternoon? Probably not today. Should we understand that rest is about a place? Certainly are some places more restful. Again, I'd say that back porch of the Tennessee cabin is definitely a whole lot more restful, physically speaking, mentally, socially even, than the Dan Ryan in Chicago. But the rest that Christ has called us to is not simply about escaping life here on this earth. The rest that He's called us to today is not just about being somewhere that I want to be. There's a lot of, can I say better states? Can I say that on the air? Can I say that with Facebook? There's a lot of better states than Illinois. There went our account. Facebook just went bloop. A lot of better states than the state of Illinois. But did the battery really go dead? That's too funny.
It just went black.
Big Brother's one.
Yep. My point exactly. Now that we're off the air, let me did that really? There's a lot of places that we can say, oh, it'd be so much more peaceful, so much more resting, so much better for me if we weren't here in the state of the politics of Illinois. If we weren't here in the state of a gazillion degrees below zero Illinois. If we weren't here with all the white stuff out, there'd be some places that this would just be really nice. When I hear about people like, we have an office lady at work who is in the Florida Keys right now. Well, why not? Why would you not be in Baston, Florida as well? Why wouldn't you be there? Why would at this point, why? That's not what this rest is about. It's not about a timing. It's not about a location. It's about the person of Christ. And may we've grasped that full rest. There's a lot of people, I think, that are putting a lot of emphasis on, you better not have a rake in your hand on Sunday afternoon, even if it's for fun and games. A lot of people are putting the rest in, it's called me and me time. Although, I really thought I read somewhere about us dying to ourselves, but nonetheless, it's about me and it's about me time. It's what I want. There's a lot of rest that is talked about being in a specific place of, if only I could be there. If only I could get away from this, whatever this might be. That's not what the rest is. We're thinking that our rest will be found in any place besides Christ. We miss out on that rest, just like they missed out on it. And the reasoning for missing out on it is the same reasoning. What was it? Unbelief. Not trusting Him. And then may we be able to find rest. I honestly, I can't imagine. This will be the biggest test of my faith. I don't know if I could go to Atlanta in a car and say, yeah, I'm feeling restful right now in Christ. No, it's possible. It is absolutely possible to be able to be in complete rest in Christ, even in the midst of a traffic jam in Atlanta, Georgia, Chicago, Illinois, in the Capitol building. Think of Reverend Bob in the Capitol building of Springfield, Illinois. We can live that rest. May we have that rest. Let's pray. Lord, we thank you again for who you are, and I thank you for that rest that is spoken of all the way back in the creation, all the way back to the children of Israel, missing it because of their unbelief, all the way back to the very pen and mouth of David, as he reminds them at that point, now as an established kingdom, that they still have an opportunity for that rest. And then again in the book of Hebrews, where we're again reminded that today is that opportunity to enjoy, to know, to take claim to that rest that has been promised to us. And what a joy we do have that one day for those who believe to truly grasp in the fullest extent of it all what the rest is that we've been pursuing this whole time. All found in you, all rooted in our Lord. And I just pray that we'd be able to have lives that evidence peace that passes all understanding. And we have a contentment that is rooted because of that peace that passes all understanding. And that we'd be able to find that it's not about a place, it's not about time, it's not about a removal of circumstance, but it's about the very addition of